Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast series exploring Cohort 1 experiences of Fit for Mission. Today, we're joined by Fran Nunn, who is a curate in Church St Helens, and we're going to hear all about her experiences. Hi, Fran, welcome. Thanks for being with us today. Can you give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, your role, the church that you're involved at?
Yeah, sure. So I came to St Helens from Warrington, where I'd been an ordinand, and was principally working with St Andrew's Denton's Green, and then once we become a wider parish, kind of officially became part of the Church St Helens team. But we've been kind of working as Church St Helens really since the start of my curacy. They were already well on in that process
Hmm.
of working as is. Yeah, so we've been here for now, what, 2.5, nearly 3 years,
Wow, okay.
and have really kind of seen the journey of once everybody kind of said yes to Fit for Mission, to see how that kind of worked its way through to becoming the one larger parish in May last year.
Our first question then for today, what were your expectations of what Fit for Mission would be like in practice and how is it actually ended up being in reality?
I think for me coming into St Helens, it's been fascinating because we were on that first wave of being Fit for Mission and seeking to become a larger parish. So the deanery had already been on some exploration journeys, so I kind of dropped in where the decision was about to be made.
Hmm.
And so there was already a sense that things are going to change. While you're here as a curate, we're going to be on this journey together. It's not
Mm.
necessarily going to be what you might have had in mind for a traditional, in inverted commas, curacy.
Hmm.
Um, and I think having that preparation was really helpful.
Mm.
Um, so in reality, so I was quite open-minded, I think is what I'm
Hmm.
saying, as to what the curacy would be like. Um, Having come from sort of education and some
Sure.
leadership experience in education, I was already very much into collaboration and being part of a team.
Hmm.
Well, I was actually really excited about uh, what that might look like within ministry
Hmm.
as opposed to within a school setting. The reality of Fit for Mission was kind of just the importance of being a really cohesive team when you're facing such a challenging level of change,
Hmm.
both in terms of how we work together, but also the whole pastoral reorganization, how you navigate, people coming in from different traditions and different theological backgrounds. So um, seeing how that's kind of worked through in reality has been really interesting as a curate. I've learned an awful lot from that.
Could you share a little bit more about how that has worked in reality with the sort of like different theological viewpoints? Because um, that's that's quite a common concern people who aren't yet in Fit for Mission have.
I think the interesting thing about any new strategy is you share quite a lot of information, and people can hear it in different ways. So I think a lot of people might have heard or perceived that Fit for Mission was creating these one larger parishes, and we'd all become some kind of homogenous one mass,
Hmm.
and we'd be expected to kind of um, almost kind of blend our traditions, our
Mm.
theologies in some kind of way, that our distinctiveness and our diversity would be lessened. And actually, my experience in reality of St Helens certainly is that we always said that the richness of diversity of tradition and approach, churchmanship, all of that was respected and also formed part of a really rich offer to the people
Mm.
of St Helens. We know that people, when they're sort of digging into and exploring faith, they the opportunity to have different spaces, different ways of doing that, that work for them, even if it's a particular point in their life, is
Hmm.
really important. So as a team, we were really keen to try and get that message across, that
Hmm.
nothing was going to be watered down in terms of our diversity or theology or churchmanship, that actually we were celebrating that. And I felt that was quite important.
So next question then, what have you found to be the most difficult part of the Fit for Mission process?
But I think one of the most challenging things, most difficult things is that sense of almost feeling that the workload had actually increased to some extent. But we acknowledged that in CLT and tried really hard to kind of work. So CLT is our clergy leadership team. Try to work through together and listen to one another and try and find ways of supporting one another through it. Again, I would just reinforce that we had a really supportive clergy team, and that really helped. You know, that was a blessing we didn't take for granted. Yeah,
Makes sense.
I think the other sort of challenging thing was around the right buildings process, which certainly for our congregations was quite an anxious time, probably. It was really important that the team, the right buildings team, were people from St Helens churches, were lay people predominantly, and with the support of the diocese, did a hugely difficult task of assessing the long-term sustainability of our buildings. Obviously, that's still working through. We're still sort of looking at how buildings are sustainable. You know, making tough decisions sometimes around what that might look like. But I think the generosity of lots of people, and again, communication and understanding what the process means, that we're not, because when you say right buildings and, you know, do we look at closing churches, when you hear churches, people hear the whole community, and that's absolutely never what it was. It's looking at the right buildings for what we want to do. So, you know, Carissa's area dean was always saying, we're not closing worshipping communities, we're creating and sustaining and continuing to nurture the communities that already exist. We just want the right spaces for them to flourish. But that process I know was quite difficult, and certainly for St Andrews, where I am, you know, we're part of that feasibility phase. But there was loads of support, actually, loads of support from the diocese and different people and advisors coming in. So that was really helpful, even though it was difficult.
Yeah, even though it was difficult, you felt like the support was there to sort of enable you to like move through the process, even though it was a tricky time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the other side then is, what have you found to be some of the best bits of all things Fit for Mission?
Yeah, I think the like I said, I'm a very collaborative leader, always have been, and so being part of a wider clergy team has been fantastic. You know, whatever our differences, you know, we've always sought to kind of honour one another, respect one another. We've laughed together, you know, we've wrestled with stuff together, and so that sense of being part of a team, and also supporting the lay people in developing their teams, so that the whole Cultivate initiative around supporting lay people to find their giftings, find their calling. And we've seen some incredible people who they would say they've never have considered themselves to be leaders in their imaginings, just finding their heart, finding where they feel God's calling them, and being supported into pursue and develop that. So we've got a fantastic community that's set up in a local nursing home, which was born out of someone's heart to support the carers, because they'd never had that sort of support that they felt they needed, people just to talk to, and to see a small team of people just absolutely flourishing and ready to go on to the next stage of what that worshipping community looks like is just a real joy. And also to see maybe existing communities just get a new lease of life, maybe to look again at why they meet or exist, and focus in on what their mission is, and have the support to kind of take things to the next step or refresh it in some way.
Yeah.
And also courage to kind of perhaps lay down some things, especially when you're creating new things, new worshipping communities. You can't necessarily keep doing all the old stuff that was previously done. So learning how to kind of managing the shifts and growing communities has been interesting, but also a joy just to see people stepping up.
Next question. What have been the benefits of working as a larger parish?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, the sort of first couple of years working as is and then tipping into becoming the single large parish, there were challenges. I think we're almost a year in and we're actually starting to see those benefits filter through. So we have an incredible central services team who support us with finance and buildings and admin, and that is starting to function so beautifully. Learning from things. So finance, for example, understanding how the finances work, that all the single churches within the larger parish are all honoured, all have their own budgets, learning how to budget. I mean, we're not taught that in theological college.
No.
So again, the reality of what it means to steward well. I've learnt so much from the finance officers here and the support team that we have, to see the blessings of that sort of come to fruition, and the relationships with that team really developing and growing. So we no longer just feel like a clergy leadership team. We feel that central services is part of that wider team, just helping everything to work much more fluidly and support one another. And it works in ways for occasional offices as well, particularly around funerals or baptisms or even weddings. The ability to, if the idea is that if it's someone in your geographical area and they want you to do one of the occasional offices, it's like you get first call, but we'll all support one another if this, they need someone to fill in or to cover. And that's working so well as well. We feel really supported. And there's a sense, I think, for me, again, my own learning and reflecting on it, the sense of being one church, one faith, one Lord. And I think there's kind of ripples of that. So if you were a curate or a minister in one church, if it's quite intense and could potentially be inward focusing, or at least if it's outward focusing on quite a narrow area of your parish. Here you've got a much broader perspective and a sense of the wider church, and that also links in with our relationships with other Christian churches across St Helens, the partnership working that we have, the good relationships that we seek to build. So the spirit of it is really important. Your central services team are, make them your best of friends. Always buy them biscuits because because they're absolute diamonds, and you've got that really good relationship with them, and you're willing to kind of see them as your partners and collaborators, and you're all in it together. That is a huge difference. And I have to say that as a curate, kind of coming to the end of my curacy, that sense of collaborative working and unity has been the thing that I've looked for in the posts that I've applied for and gone for.
Okay, we've got our final question then. What would you like to share with others who are feeling unsure about taking the next steps in their Fit for Mission journey?
Say that like any journey, there's the rough with the smooth. We're all facing change. We're all facing challenges, whether we choose to be part of Fit for Mission or not. But what I would say with Fit for Mission is that you journey with your clergy colleagues in a way that is so much more affirming, life affirming. If being part of that team and the respect and care that's been shown, the ability to have, when you're having those tough times, and just to wrestle with something together, to be honest and be sharing those struggles with people. I'd not experienced that in sort of church life or organisation before. I think the sense of having that wider team with that central services team that can support you, we're starting to see the benefits of that. So when people think, oh gosh, how long is it going to take? You will get there. But it's always better to be journeying together in it. I'm always reminding we follow Jesus, and he had a team of, there was his 12 disciples, but then there was that whole crew around of the wider disciples. They were journeying it together, and that this kind of feels like a model for the church, being one, and actually being seen by our communities as one church that is for them, like God is for them. The witness to it just feels magnified somehow, in that way. Well, whilst also honouring our differences and our diversity, which I think again is a huge message to the community. We're for you, and there will be a place for you, no matter who you are or what, where you're at. There's it's home for you. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's always better to be journeying things together, and the blessings are always, I've found the blessings are far outweighed any of the challenges we've had to go through.
Thank you so much, Fran, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And sharing your experiences about what life has been like as a curate in Church St Helens. We wish you the best of luck as you move forward to your new parish. We'll also be sharing more conversations from others in the coming weeks and months, so stay tuned as we speak to more people about their experiences of Fit for Mission. Thanks for listening. Bye.